Good morning everybody, welcome back. Today I'm going to do a bit of a sit down talk. I'm going to be talking about these sorts of hand tools, why you would pick one over the other. Now the wood pile behind me has been contributed to quite largely by me over the past, I'd probably say 2, maybe even 3 years, using these. I'd be lying if I said all of it. You can see some pretty massive trees and stuff in the background there. They've just been dragged over. Some of it's been cut up with a chainsaw, but a huge contribution of that has been me using these. Now, I suppose the first question would be, why would I choose a kukri, full-size kukri, over a tomahawk? All right. Now, I already know a lot of people are going to say, well, depends on where you are. Because I can tell you right now, the weight of this and this, with the mask and sheath and everything, the full kits, weigh the same with these two. And they're very, very similar in length. The Tomahawk is probably about 5 inches longer in the handle, with a 19-inch handle. But the head weight is lighter than the kukri blade. So this whole kukri blade is about 620 grams. That tomahawk head is about 400 grams or 450. But overall, their weights are the same when it comes to packing and carrying. So why would I pick one over the other? All right, so depends where you are, what you're trying to achieve. Now, the Tomahawk is better, allegedly, for bigger wood, okay? And it also has the versatility of taking the head off and using it as a smaller, lighter hand tool for smaller stuff. But it can't do machete work. The kukri can do machete work and it can do knife stuff, but it's a little more difficult to choke up and do finer things with the blade as compared to the tomahawk head by itself. The tomahawk, or axes in general, also have a pole for hammering. Can't do that with the kukri. So there's a lot of, I guess, compromises that need to be made between these two tools. So, as for what I prefer, well, again, depends on where I'm going, what I'm doing. I'm experimenting with tomahawks. I'm pretty new to them. Have used a fair few hatchets, and of course I've used a lot of kukri. By themselves, if I didn't know where I was going, I choose the kukri. What if I need to clear trail stuff? I don't generally do that, but if I needed to. Other consideration that needs to be made is the weight of the mask or the sheath. So a lot of people go, oh yeah, you can get much lighter kukri. You can. If you include a heavier scabbard though, like let's say a thicker wooden scabbard, or in some cases kydex can actually be quite heavy because of all the furniture that you've got to fit to it, or can fit to it. Checkmat Carter, it gets pretty weighty in some cases. It's an issue I've been running into lately with some of my designs where I've tried to include full-size companion knives. Now, if they're not done right or if they're too thick, they can get quite heavy. Whereas a tomahawk, well, you don't have that problem necessarily. The mask is obviously a lot smaller, so it's a lot lighter. I am planning on adding pockets and stuff to this for sharpening gear and maybe a ferro rod, that kind of thing. It adds weight. So really, you'll find this on a lot of the forums as well, they're very comparable to each other. So yeah, it really comes down to where you are and what you're trying to achieve. I can achieve almost everything that the tomahawk can do with the kukri. I can't hammer with it unless I hammer on the spine or hammer on the side of the blade, which is not ideal. But I can carve a baton and use a baton with gluts or wedges to split big wood. And I've demonstrated that. even with the Tomahawk, I've come across quite large wood where I couldn't just split it with the hawk itself. And even with a full-sized axe, I couldn't split some of this wood. The grain's too twisty. So once again, I'll carve gluts and use the hammer to drive the glut through the wood. Then you have, so of course we start going into functions, okay? So we'll start with the kukri. The kukri is a very versatile tool. You can draw knife with it, you can carve with it, you can slice with it, you can butcher game with it. Of course it can be used as a weapon. And depending on how well it's made, this is an incredibly good example, people will say, oh, 90-degree spine. This doesn't have one. But I tell you what, this part here hooks over and it's so sharp that it can actually produce very, very fine tinder curls. Quick demonstration of that. Get in here, and I'll see if I can get them to stay on the stick so it's easier to show you. There you go. Bring that in close. There you go, so I can do that. And that doesn't even have a 90-degree spine. What it has is a little bit of a rollover here. Most Tomahawks don't come with a 90-degree spine. Mine does, but we'll get into that. With a kukri, you can also choke up and use it like a butcher's knife or a kitchen knife, as long as the balance is far enough forward. Like with this one, I can grab it like that and I can do that. Okay? So it has that longer cutting edge. The other benefit of that longer cutting edge is that you don't have to be as accurate when you swing. If I swing for this portion here and I accidentally hit it back here, it's no problem. Can't say the same for the Tomahawk. Alright, so we'll move on to the Tomahawk now. With the Tomahawk, all the weight is in the head. So physics dictates that it should hit harder. Even though it's a little bit lighter than the kukri, it hits harder because you've got more of a fulcrum effect, more physics operating on the head, more inertia. Alright? However, you've got to be more accurate. And if you overswing, you damage your handle. Beauty of a Tomahawk, carve a new handle in the field. Absolutely, you can do that. However, if you're tired, you'll find that you'll probably start overswinging or underswinging more often. And if you're tired and your footing's wrong, before you know it, you've got one of these in your leg. Potentially. Experience is obviously the biggest thing here. So there's that to consider as well. A lot of people say axes are intrinsically more dangerous than a knife or a kukri. I disagree with that to a point. If you are inexperienced with the tool you're using, they are all dangerous. That could even be a little folding pocket knife. I've seen people take the tops of their fingers off with them. You need to have the experience and practice, and you need to be cognizant and situationally aware of what you're doing. Right. So, to demonstrate what I'm talking about, I'm going to get a bit of wood and we're going to do a couple quick chops, side by side on the same piece of wood. As I said, they're the same weight. They're almost the same length. Alright? So, let's do that. The one thing that I will say that the Tomahawk definitely has over the kukri, it should go without saying, but I'll say it anyway. You have a lot of two-handed force that you can put behind this that you can't put behind this. Okay? Right. Now that we've gone through that and we've sort of talked about the pros and cons of each tool, I'll pause the video, I'll get some wood together and we'll do a quick sort of side-by-side comparison chopping, and then we'll start talking about the different techniques that you would use between these two. Alright, cool. Don't go away. Side-by-side chopping. We'll start with kukri on some small stuff, and you'll see that even on the stump, it's quite effective. Alright, now we'll grab the Tomahawk, same piece of wood, we'll do the same thing. So even here, you'll see my hand isn't all the way down here. It could be, but I'm not going to do that because I want control. Here's one of the benefits of a tomahawk is you can choke up, choke down for force and control, and you balance that out. So here we go. That didn't even go all the way. Oh, it went all the way through. I just didn't quite hit it hard enough. Go again. Hold on. All right. Missed. Again, accuracy is a big thing. So they both do it. This will still hit harder, but you can see they're both doing the same thickness wood. We'll move up something a little bit larger now. Something not quite as, still a bit punky, but it's a bit larger. I'll get rid of this first. Right. So that's going to take 2 chops with the kukri. Okay, now we go for tomahawk. That was pretty much one chop. I just sort of misstruck again. Accuracy takes practice. All right. Now for something a bit larger again. This is where things get a little different, okay? And you'll see a lot of people talk about this. When you get thick enough wood, the axe really starts shining. Now, I wouldn't really go above or too much thicker than this normally with either of these tools. They can do it, I've shown that. It takes time and it takes effort. All right, so we'll go side by side with this piece of wood, same thickness most of the way through. And we'll do it on the stump and then we'll do it standing. And you'll see the difference in the performance of the tools when I do this. So, stump first. This is where you start V'ing it out. Six chops, quite light too. It's a pretty punky wood. It's not super hard, okay? But we're not really caring too much about that because we're comparing them on the same bit of wood. So we'll see how we go now a little bit further up the tomahawk. I'm going to use 2 hands because that's what this tool can be used for, right? That was a bad swing. There we go. Now it broke it off a bit. But it was only 2 chops. Okay? Now we're going to stand it up. And this is how you start doing, start talking about different techniques. When you stand the wood up like this, especially for a kukri, it makes it much easier to cut. There's a technique. You flick the blade forward as you're coming down. And you can almost do like a circular motion with your chopping, all right? So it's like that. Right? 1 hit. Didn't have to be overly accurate because the kukri has a long blade. With the tomahawk, I have to stand back, put my, back foot backwards so I don't hit myself with it. 2 strikes to get through that. All right. So it's not the most scientific testing, of course. Some people go, oh well, it's not exactly the same and all that kind of rubbish. You're right. I'm not going to debate that. We'll go again. Cool. 4 chops there. Back to the kukri. All right. Whoa. Now just ripped it out of my hand, that did. That's 1. Still going to count it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? So there you go. Obviously the wood's gonna change as you're cutting it and all that kind of stuff. It's less punky up here. But we'll grab 2 pieces here and we'll have a quick talk about splitting. So splitting, I'm not going to use a baton or anything for this. I'm just going to place it there and tap it like you would with an axe, and then there you go. So you can do it that way, or again with the Tomahawk. What you do with that obviously is you go side on because it's safer. You lift the axe a little bit, you tap it in, and then you can twist it and it splits it off. That is a little bit punky there. We'll go again. Whoop. There's a knot there. And you twist it. They both do the job. Again, you start getting into bigger wood, this may or may not start performing better. I reckon it will, because that's just the physics of it, alright? But, if you look at the weeds here behind me, start talking machete work. How would you clear that with a Tomahawk? There is a way. One is to have a sharpened beard and use it like a bill hook and cut that way. And you use a hooked stick to sort of bend the plant and draw knife it, like cut it like that. Okay, now I don't have a hooked stick on me, do I? Where are we? We use this stick here. So I can sort of bend it over and just cut it like that. So I'm not getting my hands near the weed, and just slices it off like that. Okay, it is an incredibly sharp beard, so you can just do that. There you go. Okay, with the Khukuri, you just swing. Okay, that's the difference. Cool? Next thing we're going to talk about is portability. Some people get real wrapped around the axles with this, others don't. As I said, they're very similar length. Okay, so wearing them on your belt is going to be very similar, but it's not the same. The Tomahawk, you can just slip through your belt and it just hangs on your belt. You can do it on a pack, you can do it on your belt, you can do all that kind of stuff. It doesn't really wobble around much because you've got the counterbalancing and everything going on. It just doesn't want to flop around too much, okay? With the Khukuri, obviously you're going to have it in a scabbard, right? So you chuck it in your scabbard or your sheath, you've got a belt loop. Now, if you don't have a snap, it's going to flop around a bit. If you don't have a leg loop, it's going to flop around a bit, okay? In my experience. However, you have that snap and that leg loop there, it's pretty solid. The other benefit of this is that it allows for multiple sort of sheathing options. Now, obviously this one slips out a bit, doesn't really expose much of the blade, but if I had that right down here, then it doesn't slip out anywhere near as much, which allows you to do this kind of thing. Why you would do that, I don't know. I don't know. But it does give you more options. I can change the frog out, make different frogs so I can hold it sideways or whatever I want to do. With the Tomahawk, it's a little more difficult. It can be done, but it's a little more difficult. I can mount more stuff on the sheath of this one than I can on the Tomahawk. Why you would want to do it? Again, it's all personal preference type stuff. They can both split. I didn't even baton the Khukuri, but you can. This one, absolutely. You can baton the crap out of it. You do risk a little bit of breakage. I would say the same for a Tomahawk or axe. If you munt up your edge, you can take chunks out of your edge trying to baton things if you don't know what you're doing. Even the prying, with an axe or a tomahawk, you can snap your handle. Again, you can remake it in the field. You take a chunk out of your handle with the kukri, you can't do that. You can't just change your handle out. Unless you've got a partial tang, it's a bit different. So, you know, a lot of people go, oh, you know, Tomahawk versus Khukuri, Tomahawk versus Khukuri. All right, fighting. Okay, let's talk about fighting with them. I'm not trained in fighting with either of these, okay? I'll just say that up front. However, I will say that both of them are very intuitive tools as a weapon. Swing the sharp, heavy thing into somebody. Yeah, that's going to be devastating. It's got a sharpened beard on it. You can hook, you can grapple, you can, even with this upward sweep here, you can thrust, you can slice, you can chop, you can even hammer. Right, cool weapon. You can even invert it and do all this kind of rubbish and then come around and, it's just, there's so many fighting things you can do with a tomahawk, everybody knows it. With a kukri, it's, again, very intuitive. Swing the sharp bit into the enemy. You can do draw cuts, you can thrust and stab, you can do a reverse strike. There's enough weight and oomph in that. You can do non-lethal strikes, you can flip it around and strike legs and stuff like that. Don't know if I'd be doing much of that, honestly, because you've got to change your grip. Changing grips on a tomahawk fighting happens all the time. I've seen lots of people doing demonstrations of that, and I don't know about that. It would take years and years and years and years and years of practice to get good at that. I disagree with it. I reckon you just swing the heavy thing and hope you're lucky enough and better than the other person. As again, not a professional fighter. There's plenty of other videos on that, but as a weapon, they're both quite intuitive. You do get a faster repeat with one of these compared to one of those, unless you're willing to lose a bit of your range. So you're talking pretty close to that. And you can get repeat. It's still not as quick, but you can do it. And then you can always get the second hand in there if you need to. So that's fighting. We'll leave it at that. Maintenance. Okay, so maintenance between the two. This is where things get a bit different. Trying to sharpen the long, thin edge of the kukri. You got recurves, you got all sorts of different curvature going on there. It can be pretty difficult. With a tomahawk, that's all you got to do. That's all you got to really look at is your cutting edges, and they're quite small. So the trade-off for accuracy, where you need to be more accurate with this, you have less to maintain. That, you can be far less accurate, but you have more to maintain. Okay? These are all considerations that you've got to think about. So again, and with this, I can draw knife with it. I can go like this and I can draw knife, and it's a relatively flat edge along here. I can draw knife pretty accurately. With the tomahawk, I can't. You can draw knife with them, but you need to make an assembly that fits over the top, or change the handle, make a new handle where it's down here instead of up here, and you can grab hold of it like this and you can draw knife it that way. Can be done, same as that. You grab hold of that and you draw knife that way. Can be done. Not as easily and not as accurately, but it can be done, unless you have a flat bit, like, I don't know, a carving axe, right? So there's that. The reason I'm doing all of this and covering all these different bits and pieces is because I get asked a lot. They go, oh, well, why don't you use an axe? Why would you use a kukri over an axe? Well, I've shown you a couple of reasons now. But there's obviously lots of reasons why you would pick an axe over a kukri too. So, I just wanted to do a quick video showing that I do have a bit of experience with these things now. I'm pretty confident in saying that. I've done quite a bit of research into different axe heads and tomahawk heads and how they work and geometries and all that. And obviously I've done the same with kukri as well. The next branch off will be machetes. I'll start getting some experience up for machetes. I've already made one for my website. I'm just looking for a manufacturer in Indonesia or Malaysia that could reproduce it for me. And yeah, that's enough of that. The next thing I'll talk about is supplementation. So even if this was not a tomahawk and this was an axe where you couldn't take the head off the handle, you'd go, right, it's still quite versatile, but you'll see a lot of people carrying around things like Bowie knives or even smaller sort of bushcrafting belt knives to supplement their axe. It's a good option, and it also offers redundancy. Even with the Tomahawk, I've got this sharpened beard that's supposed to act like a knife. That is a redundancy for your folding knife, belt knife, bushcraft knife, whatever you want to call it. It's a redundancy for it, so it gives you that extra edge that you wouldn't otherwise have. Yeah, more to maintain, true, but you don't have to maintain it. You could even grind that off and just have it like a normal Tomahawk if you want. You can do that. I wouldn't. I prefer the redundancy that's built into these things. But the same thing could be said for the Khukuri. They go, oh, well, you know, I need a smaller knife to do smaller stuff more easily. I agree. That's why I do companion knives with most of my designs. Not all of them though. There's going to be some coming out because I know that a lot of you carry your own knives. You carry like folding knives or multi-tools and that kind of stuff. It's a good option. I always carry my multi-tool regardless of what I'm carrying here. The next point I want to bring up, I know this is kind of all over the place, is the implementation of saws into your system. I do not think, personal opinion, I do not think you could come up with a better system than a Khukuri with a small carder or a folding knife or whatever it is, multi-tool, and a folding saw. This can do the work of a hatchet, a lighter hatchet, okay? And it can do the work of smaller knives if you press it into that service, absolutely. The Nepalese have been doing that for years and years and years, but there is a reason why they usually give you a carder or small utility knife with one of these. Tomahawk. Personally, I don't see the need of a folding saw with one of these unless it is a larger one for big stuff like this kind of thing, big logs and stuff, cutting down huge trees. That's where you go, yeah, I'd use a saw. Something this size, preferably a chainsaw, but anyway, we're talking hand tools. So even a folding saw can absolutely cut something like that down if you have a large enough one. That's how they used to do it back in the day. But if I'm carrying an axe, it should be able to do large enough stuff that I don't need a saw. So now we're going to start talking about the implementation of supplementation into your system with regards to weight. If I'm carrying this, I'm not going to carry a folding saw. I don't see why I would need it except for crafting purposes, and I'm not really much of a bushcrafter, okay? This should be able to do my bigger wood, and it should be able to do my smaller wood, and it should be able to do carving, it should be able to do a lot of things, processing game, all that kind of stuff. Most good hatchets and axes, if they've got the right edge geometry and heat treatment, can do that if they're well made, like this one is. With a Khukuri, obviously you can't do quite as large a wood over the long term because you get shock up the handle and all that kind of stuff. I would definitely put a folding saw with this. So that changes things. I go, cool, I'm going to take a smaller Khukuri with a folding saw, right? And it should add up to around the same weight as an axe, but it can do more. When you start talking about larger wood, a saw, like everyone goes, oh, a Khukuri is super effective until you get to larger wood, then an axe comes in. That's where the axe starts overtaking the Khukuri. Well, I will argue that as soon as the wood starts getting a little bit big for an axe, the saw will overtake all of them. That's how it naturally happened anyway with technology. So, and then you got a chainsaw for even bigger stuff. So it all boils back down to where do you live, what do you want it to be able to do, and what is your system. I'm on an adventure motorcycle more often than not. I can carry both of these and a multitude of other things in my kit. But as soon as I start hiking and walking away from camp, I take this. Because I don't know what I'm going to run into. That's why I even called it the Void Walker, is because you don't know where you're going. This will help you. It'll do machete work, it'll do hatchet work, it'll do knife work, it'll do everything with compromises. This I called World Walker. It's a little more worldly. You know where you're going. That's the intent, is you already know where you're going. You're not clearing trails, because we don't do a whole lot of that, especially in Australia. We don't clear a whole lot of trails. We don't have enough jungle, and even if we were to clear trails, we wouldn't be allowed to in a lot of cases, because it's all national parkland and stuff. But so you know where you're going, you know that you're going to need wood, but you don't need to be busting a trail through jungle. That's where this comes in. It's about where you are, what you need. All right. So I think I've covered off over quite a few points. And now we're going to come down to my personal preferences. If I were on an adventure ride somewhere and I needed to take a tool with me in case something happened, there was a downed tree, whatever, I'd take this. If I need, because sometimes I do need to prune a little bit. I do need to get rid of some small stuff, small leafy stuff that I would probably end up hurting myself with if I was trying to do it with this. So adventure riding, stuff like that, don't know where I'm going, Khukuri. If I know where I'm going for a camp and I just need to get some firewood and stuff, do some carving, relax a little bit, maybe a little bit of hiking, but along known trails, World Walker, 100%, okay? That's my personal preferences when it comes to that. Fighting, this. I prefer to, if I had to fight, I would fight with one of these, because I'm not trained, I'm not a professional, and you know what? More sharp bit is good. Close-up stuff, even if you get in a bind, you can slice through and get free. You could probably do that with a tomahawk as well. If you were quick enough to go, oh, nope, he's closed in, I'll go like this, and I don't have as much confidence in wielding that weight all at the end with a tomahawk, you know. With a Khukuri, I am very confident that I can quickly, you know, get them back. You know, I'm not trying to attack people. If I ever had to use one of these in combat, which I never will, and I'm quite grateful for that, I reckon this would be more efficient at getting people away from you and taking off bits and pieces that come a bit too close to you. Hunting, right? Next sphere, hunting. What would I prefer? This might surprise some people. If I had to pick out of these with no supplementation, I'd choose this. For hunting, I would prefer this over a Khukuri. Why? Because I can take the head off and I've got a knife. So I can do this sort of thing, I can slice, I can use it like an ulu for skinning if it's sharp enough. And I've even rounded this pole on purpose so that once you've got the skinning started, I know some people might be a little bit upset by this conversation, but sorry guys, this is my channel, deal with it. Right, even with that on, I go, yep, sweet, even on the handle, I can pull the hide away and flay the skin without puncturing the hide of the animal, all right? I can do my tinder and all of that, and I can even with this, I can even do my fire, and it's safe. I can't say the same for this. So yeah, hunting, I'd go the tomahawk. Fighting, Khukuri. Camping, tomahawk. Hiking into an unknown area, Khukuri. Hunting, tomahawk. All right? That is my take on this. Now, if you needed to do bigger wood, you take a heavier axe head or heavier tomahawk head. All right, I don't need that. I don't. I've got a massive Gomboy 270 folding saw for that. This is for lighter stuff. By the same token though, I could say I'll get a heavier, longer Khukuri. I've seen Khukuri that are 21-inch long blades. Just the blade is 21 inches. The thing weighs nearly 2 kilograms. Tell you what, it'll cut a tree down, no worries. It'll do a lot of other things too, but it's not very... You lose a lot of versatility with that. You start getting into diminishing returns with your tools. So you need to optimize what you do more often than not. You need to satisfy the general usage, not the outliers, okay, with your system. So, yeah. What's more versatile out of these two? There's no winner. I'll tell you right now, there's no winner. A lot of people argue, oh, the Khukuri's more versatile. I disagree. There's things this can do that that can't. There's things that can do that that can't. And depending on what you need is obviously what you're going to choose. That's why I'm stocking both in my shop. That's why I'm designing both. And machetes are coming soon. Why? Because although this can do machete work, it's not a machete. You get a 14-inch machete, lightweight machete, and you're in a jungle, it's going to blaze through stuff and you're going to wear out with this before you do it for the machete. Alright, I'm not saying the right tool for the right job necessarily, because you might not know where you're going. I'm saying versatility is value, okay? But I'm also saying know the limits of your tool. Everything is cyclic and everything is in balance. And that's what you got to remember. Anyway, I think I've rambled on for quite a while now. I didn't intend on rambling on this long. I just wanted to touch base on a very controversial topic that a lot of people talk about. They go, oh, big bowie knife or tomahawk, you know, axe or saw, all that kind of stuff. These are the two that I'm focusing on today. And again, got a bit of experience now. My hands are knackered from doing it, because I don't wait long enough to heal up properly. But anyway, yeah, feel free to give me your feedback and your experience as well, because I can guarantee you there's going to be people out there that are going to go, oh, I've got an axe and I've got one of these and it outperformed the axe. I've done it, I've seen it. It can happen, but you need to also think about edge geometry, edge retention, how well you've sharpened it, all that rubbish, but we're not getting into that today. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm not going to start wailing on stuff in front of the camera. I've done sort of basic comparisons in front of you. You can also watch my dedicated video on Void Walker, my dedicated video on World Walker, and you can also see comparisons there, because a lot of the wood around here is the same. You've got a lot of like hard gums, and you've got some pines, and they're not too hard, obviously. It's pine. Pine's not that hard compared to things like river red gum and stuff like that. So, but I try to test on hard wood. So a lot of people go, oh, you know, that doesn't seem to be performing that well. You got to be careful, because you got to know what wood you're working with as well. So that's why when I do a big offcut, I tend to show the grain inside, where a lot of times you can't even see the grain. It's just that tight, it's that dense. But anyway, yeah, look, that'll do. That'll definitely do. I've said enough. I'm going to review the footage, edit it, and put it together, and hopefully it'll actually make some sense to you, because I know I talk very quickly and I bounce around a lot. That's just the way I work. All right, thank you very much. Catch us on the next video.